All right, let's get started. Good morning, I'm James Thomson from Buy Box Experts. Thank you all for joining this morning. I am very excited to have two of my favorite Amazon people joining me today to talk about how do inferior brands win on Amazon, or why your lesser competitors seem to outsell you on Amazon on a daily basis. I'm joined today by Jeff Cohen, a globally renowned expert who educates and motivates Amazon sellers on cutting-edge ways to improve their businesses, grow their sales, and drive profits. Along with the team at Seller Labs, Jeff works with tens of thousands of Amazon sellers, helping them with reputation management, brand building, advertising, and listing optimization. Today, Seller Labs manages over $100 million in Amazon advertising and sends over 1 million buyer-centered communications that build strong retail relationships. I'm also joined by Joe Hansen, who is the founder of the Buy Box Experts. Joe is also my business partner. Having helped hundreds of brands create effective Amazon strategies to protect intellectual property, develop best-in-class branding, and use data-driven advertising, Joe is also the co-founder of Prosper Show, the largest Amazon seller conference in the US, and co-author with me of the Amazon Marketing Dilemma book, published 3 years ago. Joe is a serial entrepreneur who has built and sold 5 businesses in the last 10 years, most of them focused on the Amazon channel. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to have a good, heated discussion today around why inferior brands are winning on Amazon. Let me start by asking, what makes winners different than everybody else when it comes to the Amazon channel? Joe, Jeff?
You want to start off, Jeff?
Sure. I think, you said a battle. I don't know that Joe and I battle too much because I think a lot of times our opinions are very centered in data and analytics and history. And I think that, what I think the one thing that I think lets you win is understanding how to put the right effort in the right place at the right time and not being distracted. Amazon has a lot of data that's disjointed. It has a lot of programs. It has a lot of different things you can be doing. But every product, every brand, every business on Amazon needs a strategy. And the ones that are developing and executing that strategy are the ones who come out on top.
Joe, anything you'd like to add?
I would say that just like you see in other realms of e-commerce, whether it's paid social, whether it's SEO, whether it's pay-per-click advertising across Google and Bing and other things like that, it's about staying up to date on the algorithmic changes, but like the cutting edge strategy among the variety of brands or products that you see. And on Amazon, the game is a little different, and it requires like a holistic understanding of what are all of the levers that I can pull that influence the algorithm, along with like what are all the things I can do product side and branding side that actually appeal to consumers. And so it's really the merging of like everything you learned or should have learned in business school years ago in the 90s about branding, plus all of the latest ingredients in e-commerce technical space.
So we use this word strategy a lot, and yet a lot of what makes sellers successful on Amazon involves some of the tactics and the day-to-day operational aspects of running a business. I'd like your thoughts in terms of where do most brands miss out or underinvest their time and money when it comes to building an Amazon business? Where are the common mistakes that you typically run into when you encounter brands that are struggling with competition?
Well, so I'll jump in here first. I think a brand, when they're looking at how do they improve their sales on Amazon, they're looking specifically at their product detail pages, typically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They're looking at everything from images, video, reviews, price, the ads that they're running, the titles, bullets, A+, search terms, descriptions, all of those elements.
Yes.
And a lot of them may invest a lot of time in video. They may invest a ton of time in A+ content and in their description and bullets and those things. But when you look at the rising kind of competitive stream of products that tend to do really well and beat out some of the national brands what you find are really some core elements don't have to do with all of those things. Those are necessary ingredients, but where they really beat the big brands typically has to do with price. And a lot of them strategically bundle products so that they can still maintain a high AOV, but offer their price per unit at a lower price. A lot of them have a better review game than the national brands do when it comes to reviews. And we can get into more detail about that in a minute. As far as images go, a lot of them basically are copycats of the best product selling, but then they create a better image, or they have more attractive models or more attractive lifestyle images. And that sells. There's a lot to be said about the implications of benefits from just having an attractive person in your images. They also are more adept at categorization. And so they understand typically what the subcategory that they should be putting their brands into in order to get a bestseller or Amazon's Choice badge. And then they target bottom funnel advertising, whereas a lot of brands on advertising are going after the entire funnel. These ones are specifically going after bottom funnel, and they're bidding as high as they can in order to really cannibalize those terms.
Jeff, thoughts on what brands are typically missing out on that ultimately ends up hurting their business?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Joe gave a really good list, and Joe, your list goes back to your original statement, which was levers, right? And so I think of it in the same way, and it's a matter of knowing which of those levers to pull and how hard to pull them. And so I do believe that the brands that are doing it best have developed a playbook, and they understand that to launch a product, they have to have best-in-class photos. They have to have a best-in-class listing with keyword research. So they're not deciding, well, maybe I'll come back and do photos later. They're nailing their 5-10 things that are core to their business taking off and being successful. I think the other thing is that you mentioned price, but I would back it up, maybe going back to the marketing class side of things. And I would say they truly understand their unique selling proposition, and they truly understand their buyer persona. And they're okay with the fact that their product may not be an end-all be-all for everyone, and they will target those images, that title, the description to the buyer persona, the typical buyer of their product, and their unique selling proposition. And that's what allows you, when you say compete on price, I think there's an automatic assumption that compete on price means you have to be the lowest price. But if you have a unique selling proposition and you bring that value across within your marketing, you can actually sell a better premium product, because there are people that are looking for that premium product out there in the marketplace. And so sometimes the competitor will come in and they will beat you because they'll do everything Joe said. They'll have better photos, they'll have a better listing, they'll have better keywords, and they'll be a couple dollars cheaper. And it's like, then if you're just in a commoditized product, you're in trouble. If you don't have that unique selling proposition to say, my product is better for this reason, and you had said to us before, give examples, right? So I'll use Death Wish Coffee, because I think they nail the USP and the buyer persona.
Okay.
And if you look at Death Wish's site, and if you're not familiar with them, they were a digitally native brand. They were born on Amazon. You can now find them all over the world in stores and online, but they started in Amazon. They had a very specific, unique selling proposition, the world's strongest coffee. It comes right across in their ads, right across in their copy, and they have a very distinct look that they're going for. Now, that look is not my wife. My wife still drinks or would drink Death Wish coffee, but they're okay not going after somebody with a persona like my wife, because they're trying to sell an image, a lifestyle. That's why everyone's tattooed, and that's why everyone's pierced. And I always like to joke, their CEO, who all three of us know, is not tattooed or pierced. Everybody that works for him is. But that's the unique selling proposition, and that's the buyer persona, and that's what allows them to win. Now, they've got great photography, they've got a great review game, they've got a great product, right? They're not cheaper than everybody else, but they're able to go in and disrupt a massive market that was dominated by, the brands we grew up watching commercials on, right?
Okay, so Jeff, let me interrupt here for a sec. So I'm a digitally native brand. I only sell on Amazon today. Maybe I have dreams of potentially being as broadly distributed as something like your example. But right now I'm on Amazon. That's where I'm at. I make a product that has some sort of differentiation, but I'm not really sure why when I search for my brand, it turns out I've got the right kind of listing. I've got the right digital assets in my listing. And yet other people, and let's assume people are playing by white hat rules here, there are a lot of other competitors that are way outselling me, doing a much better job at the top of consideration on organic search. How do I start to tease apart where in the sales funnel I'm falling down? Help me understand that, because right now all I see is the outcome, which is I'm not particularly relevant. I may not be on the first page of organic search for most terms. How do I start to figure out what's ultimately driving at that and causing these no-name competitors to win sale after sale ahead of me?
Yeah, that's a deep question. And again, I'll say that it's one that you have to do for every product, right? You can't just say, I'm going to do it for my Amazon account. I probably would start and look in my health, right? So just overall, is my account healthy? Am I hitting my metrics? Amazon wants to sell products that meet and exceed the customer expectation. I would probably look at my reviews and my Q&As. I would look at how is my product fair compared to my competitors' products. And I would look at reviews on like a review per 100 order or per 1,000 order basis to try to get a sense. I wouldn't try to compete of like, I have 10 reviews and they have 100. I would try to get a sense of how many reviews you're getting per 100 orders or per 1,000 orders. Okay. You want to be at about 1 to 2%. People like numbers, so we'll share some numbers. You want to be getting 1 to 2 reviews per 100 orders. That's a good natural review rate. And find out whether you have any problems. Then I would probably dive into my parent by child ASIN report and business reports. That's going to give me my understanding of whether I have a traffic problem or I have a conversion problem. And that's going to give me, I guess, I'll call it a 30,000 foot view as to where I potentially have a problem and what lever I might need to pull harder. And I think that's I think the challenge of every Amazon seller is understanding where to spend your time. I would probably then take a step back into the general keywords in the general industry. And I would say, how am I doing on branded terms? And how am I doing on industry terms? So we'll stay with Death Wish. So what happens when you search for Death Wish? Yeah. And try to get a sense from the tools that are out there, how much traffic is being searched for Death Wish. Do you believe you have brand recognition, or do you, and I always say one of the easiest ways is start typing your brand into Amazon and see if it shows up in the autofill, right? That's at least a way to start. If it doesn't show up, you don't have brand recognition. Then if you're trying to compete for the term coffee, understand that what you have to do is a lot different than if you're trying to defend your brand or you're trying to conquer somebody else's brand. And I think one of the misnomers of Amazon is that I sell coffee, I want to sell on Amazon, I'll put my brand on Amazon and I'll just get a piece of those sales. And it just doesn't work that way. It's not that easy. You have to potentially be willing to send some of your external traffic into Amazon to buy your product, to drive your sales higher, to get you higher in the sales ranking. And you just have to kind of figure out where that problem sits to figure out where you want to put that energy.
Well, I've seen some brands that will show up on Amazon. They've already built strong social media followings, or what I'll call cheap traffic sources. And they're able to use those to drive, at least some of that traffic back to Amazon to get some high converting immediate sales on new product listings. Certainly that sounds like something that makes a lot of sense. How do you think about this process of where my traffic is going to be coming from? How heavily do I invest within the Amazon space, because that's what everybody seems to be doing, versus driving traffic from outside Amazon, which may cost me dollars that otherwise I'd be investing into my Amazon advertising budget.
I think one of the important considerations is that there's, for lack of a better word, there's strong institutional investment in advertising nowadays. There wasn't previously, but now
what does this mean, this term?
it means that the big holdings companies are working with large brands and buying up significant amounts of ad space, which has increased the cost of ad space of your advertising significantly. If it cost you $1 per click last year, it's probably $1.50 or $2 per click this year. And that will continue to rise on Amazon. That doesn't mean that there's insufficient opportunity. There's still a lot, every month, the amount of keywords searched on Amazon increases, right? So you can continually mine additional long tail or some of these medium tail keywords. And as you gain relevance, you can go after some of these short tail keywords in advertising and also organically. But off Amazon advertising is increasingly becoming one of the most important parts of a holistic strategy to really launch and maintain organic rank, but also just total profitability of your SKUs on Amazon. Let me explain that. If you're able to build the appropriate funnels off of Amazon, and let's just say you're building an item through Facebook advertising, and you send that traffic to a landing page to your own website, to where then the visitors that go into that website appropriately filter to Amazon, the ones that actually want to purchase, then you're going to artificially inflate your conversion rate. And I say artificially, meaning that you're not just sending all the traffic there.
Right, it's filtered traffic, sure.
Conversion funnel. And Amazon is going to recognize that, and you're going to gain additional relevance for paid and non-paid traffic. And so off Amazon advertising is one of the best ways to launch new products, but also to maintain your rank among very highly competitive categories or keywords. I want to very quickly talk about what Jeff was talking about. I love that he talked about traffic or conversion problems, because when you're talking about why is this inferior brand, for lack of a better phrase, why are they somehow outranking me in paid or organic traffic? Or why am I not selling as much as I want to? Well, whether it's opportunity or whether you're trying to fix a problem, like when you talk about sales on Amazon, there's only 3 things that influence sales. It's traffic, conversion, and price. And so you either have a pricing problem, a traffic problem, or a conversion problem, or a combination of all of those or some of those. And that's how I like to view it. I like to start at the top and say, okay, this brand is only selling $1 million a month. We have a brand that we worked with that sells luxury hair towels, and they had their sales were dropping during COVID. They were plummeting from what they were before. And in order for them to fix the problem, we had to first dive in and say, what is the problem? Well, it's not a pricing problem. Your pricings are still the same. It's not a conversion problem. Your conversion rates are actually up from where they used to be. It was a traffic problem. And then we had to diagnose, where's the drop in traffic? Is it from organic traffic? Is it from paid traffic? And we saw that really organic traffic had plummeted across the board for everyone because people weren't buying luxury items in the midst of a pandemic. So what could we do? Well, we could influence paid traffic. And so we worked with them to build off Amazon advertising in order to increase the amount of traffic going to their listing, because there really just wasn't that much traffic either in paid or organic on Amazon.
So you're pulling advertising dollars out of Amazon and reassigning them to off Amazon advertising sources. Is that correct?
Correct. And that can work.
You're going to get in trouble. Don't say that out loud.
I'm saying it out loud because we're all here to learn.
New customers to Amazon. That's not going to get you.
No, and I agree. And I agree with you. And that was a great example and illustration of like, you had to go search to find that problem. I think there's another, layer of this, which is that when you start to push external traffic, right? So there was a brand that we worked with in the toy space. I don't have permission to use their name, so I'll just describe them that way. And they had built a really big Facebook following. And they used that Facebook following to release a coupon on Black Friday and drive traffic to Amazon. And they were they ranked their product in top 100 in toys on Black Friday from driving external traffic. But they were prepared for that. They had the backup inventory so that they could ride that wave out for a longer period of time. But what they found, which was actually really interesting, was that they got the boost in conversion like you were expecting by sending more filtered traffic.
Yes.
But it still wasn't a 1-to-1 ratio. So they were sending people to Amazon, and some of them weren't converting on their product. And what they noticed by tracking their competitors is that they actually expanded the whole pie of their industry. And so understand that is a byproduct of what you're doing. You're going to luxury towels. You're going to grow luxury towels, but you're going to grow the pie of luxury towels. And so when you are analyzing products and categories and subcategories and trying to understand where to go, it's important to understand how your competitors are marketing themselves, because you might see an artificial market than what the true reality of organic search and traffic for that market is. And you've got to be careful to kind of balance those two things. And I like to look at external traffic again as a lever. And you called it artificial traffic. It's not artificial, it's controlled traffic. I use a slightly different term, which is like, okay, my rank is getting worse. I always get confused with rank because it's inverse. My rank is getting worse. I need to improve it, turn on that lever again, push some external traffic, get myself back up, ride the wave, because we all know that Amazon is not a straight line. It's got peaks and valleys.
So everything you said to me sounds intriguing. I'm not trying to pick on specific third-party providers of data, but how do I actually do what you said? I want to track my competitors and understand, am I increasing the category on Amazon, or am I just disproportionately getting more of that new traffic? How do I actually do that?
Well, I would say the only real way to track a competitor would be if you want a free tool-ish like Keepa or like our Scope tool, where you're tracking the competitor and you're monitoring their BSR, their bestseller ranking. That's pretty much the only white hat way to track a competitor and have an understanding of how their sales are increasing or decreasing along the way.
So if I'm tracking 3 or 4 competitors in my category for a particular product, and I'm seeing, my relative bestseller rank seems to be comparable to where it's been in the past, and my competitors are also basically where they have historically been, that tells me that we're all kind of moving in the same direction, and i.e. there may be external factors like COVID that drive huge swings in consumer preference. How do I go the next level down to say, now what do I do about that?
So I would add one thing to that, and I would say I would also track your main keywords, right? So get away from tracking 100, 500 keywords. Every product should have 5 keywords that if they owned, they'll dominate. And I like to use the example of, like, if you're going into coffee might not want to be one of your keywords, but like caffeinated coffee or roasted coffee, go a layer down or 2 layers down and build yourself up. And if you're tracking main keywords, your position, your competitor's position, and then BSR, your competitor's BSR, you start to get that picture of kind of what all's happening.
From an advertising point of view, we always recommend starting at the bottom of the funnel and making sure that you're advertising on all of your branded keywords. This is assuming that you have a decent brand on Amazon. Because if you don't do that, a couple things are going to happen. And we hear this a lot from a number of brands that we work with. When we initially talk to them about this, or even a couple of years down the road, they say, why am I spending all this money on my branded keywords? And we explain to them, well, if you stop spending on that, you're probably not going to see a drop in sales immediately. But what you will see is encroaching competitors take over that space, and they will see that your branded keywords lead to a high conversion rate for their products if their products are very similar to yours over time. And so by you owning those branded keywords and maintaining the bottom of the funnel, you're able to maintain high conversion rates on your product and then start to move up the funnel in advertising and go into things that are medium tail and then long tail, or sorry, moving from long tail then into medium and then short tail keywords. And eventually, if you're talking about coffee, you know, coffee's the last stage. That's the top funnel there.
Right, right.
But leveraging that along with, if you're a brand, I would recommend using DSP to do retargeting, so to stay top of mind. So people are coming back to your product instead of going to competitors' products. I think advertising is one of the biggest levers you can pull that will help you increase your awareness, top of mind, and actually bring traffic to your product if you start with a bottom-up approach. One good example is an automotive brand that we worked with, that automotive parts brand. They had been on Amazon for a number of years, sold. They were very strong in their category, one of the top brands there. But a lot of these kind of upstart brands were starting to outsell them. And so when we started to work with them, what we identified was they weren't bidding on any of their branded keywords. They assumed all of that traffic would flow through to them. Within 3 months of heavily spending on those branded keywords, the cost per click started to drop. So initially it was very high in order to dominate that space. Then it started to drop. And after doing that, you know, their sales went up 200% within 90 days of being able to capture all that branded traffic and capturing it at such a high conversion rate. They then had the funds to spend on all of the other keywords and start moving up the funnel. So I think one of the ways that these inferior products tend to poach off sales is they go right after those branded keywords. And so you need your advertising strategy.
So let me give a little color here for some people that are asking some questions, right? So there are what we'll call generic keywords, which is like a category-esque coffee, roasted coffee, vanilla bean coffee. Then there's brand defense. So if you're Death Wish coffee, that's protecting Death Wish coffee, Death Wish, right? Those are branded keywords around the brand of your name, and you're defending your brand. And then there's brand conquest, which is like Death Wish bidding on Maxwell House. So just, I saw a couple questions pop up, so I wanted to make sure we covered that, so people that didn't know kind of understood the difference between those keyword types.
Let me ask you, Jeff, to clarify something you talked about with tracking bestseller rank of competitors. How do you think about how many competitors to track, which competitors to track? How do you come up with that initial list?
You know, I keep it really simple, because the more data you have, the more confusing things get. I try to start with my top five my top five keywords. You know, I call it like the target test. If I walked into Target and held this up and asked somebody what it was, what keyword are they gonna tell me? And then I want to look for who's kind of around, like Joe said, like who's around me that I want to compete against. So I'm not going after the number one seller. The odds of me becoming, number one, page one for top keyword isn't going to happen. So I kind of create a group that I believe is that I can beat, and I go after them, and that group of keywords and that group of competitors is going to change over time as my product builds and gets more momentum. So, when I get to a certain point, I'm then going after the next level.
So some of the companies that we've worked with, they come in the door and they announce to us who their competitors are, but they haven't really studied who on Amazon is actually eating their lunch every day, because often it's brands they've never encountered anywhere else other than now on Amazon. How do you have that conversation, and how do you introduce the idea that there may be some no-name competitors that are actually critical to tracking competitive activity?
I think one of the best ways to do that is just leveraging. Well, let me answer that in two parts. One is to leverage some tools like Helium 10, Jungle Scout, some of the Seller Labs tools, other things like that, that give you a good competitive set of data to look at people within your subcategory and how they're ranking and how they're doing. Another answer, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier. You asked, how are you tracking your position within your market? One of the ways that we did that, and I mentioned this hair towel brand, was we used brand analytics and tracked their brand search terms. We tracked their search frequency rank, and we saw how those brand keywords were increasing in search volume, which then showed, oh, the brand is actually gaining relevance and increasing in search volume on Amazon. So brand analytics is one of the most powerful tools that you can use to understand your brand's position on the channel.
And that's right there in Seller Central for anybody to
You have to have brand registry.
Yep. Yeah.
We were working with a national electric razor company, and they were having this issue. And the biggest issue they were having was that they were just flat out saying all of these are cheap Chinese knockoff products. So
Sure.
I don't need, like, that's not who we compete against. And their problem is that they were coming from the store and they were saying, okay, on a store shelf, when you walk into Target or Walmart, there's only a certain array of products that are on the shelf. And because they have so many different variations of their products, half the products you could buy on the shelf are their brand. And all of a sudden you come to a digital shelf and that no longer exists. And part of the way we did it was to visually show them what the digital shelf looked like.
Right.
And we were able to kind of show them by demonstrating the brands that were there and the bestseller ranking of those brands to demonstrate how much of the market share they were getting. And and then like Joe said, you've got to come back with the first thing in this case that I want to do is I want to own my brand. My brand is very well recognized. So I want to own my brand. And even though it might cost me more than I want it to, nobody should be able to find my product. Nobody should have trouble finding me when they're looking for me.
Right.
Now, that will start to drive some of the sales that you need to get your rank better, to get better organic ranking for more and more keywords. This is really easy to see if you've done e-commerce, right? So another whole side of Seller Labs business is running e-commerce shops through our sister company, Xcart. And when you do e-commerce SEO, you can literally post a blog article and you can tie into a tool like SEMrush or Moz, and week after week after week, it's going to show you how many keywords you rank for and where you're ranking, where you're ranking for that. And you see the growth of your page. And then it's tied to your Google Analytics that shows you how much traffic is coming in from that keyword and where it's coming from. So you can see the growth of organic. And so what happens when people go into Amazon is that like there's this big black box put around them. And so all the lines don't connect. And so what we have to do as I call us brand engineers, right? As brand engineers, what we have to do is be able to draw enough conclusion of what's happening to make an educated decision on what direction to go. Because it's really difficult for us to make all the lines line up and say, this is what we need to do. But I can see in general what's happening, how I'm doing on a keyword. I can see what's happening with my BSR. I can see what's happening with my ads, either at an A cost or a total advertising cost. And I can use those different pieces of information to go back to what we talked about at the beginning and define and refine a strategy. And I think that's another kicker of like what makes brands better than others is you don't just create the strategy, you have to use the analytics to refine the strategy over time.
We keep talking about brands, and yet so many of these digitally native brands on Amazon, there's a trademark, there's some name tied to the product, but there's no essence to that brand. And certainly if I look at some of the Chinese brands that have shown up, I can't even pronounce some of these names because they're just random letters. Those aren't necessarily brands in the way that consumers see a series of brand promises being applied to that brand. And yet those products are playing the Amazon game well enough that they can end up at the top of the page. And let's assume we're dealing with white hat activity here. How do brands that don't really have an essence to them, how is it that they still win when there really isn't a branding story behind the effort?
Well, let's talk about what it means to like have a brand equity, right? Outside of Amazon, brand equity is like the summation of like goodwill. It's what people think of your brand when they hear or see your name or see your trademark, those things. And you've built that through all sorts of different media to acquire that over time. On Amazon, like what is brand equity? Well, all the latest data, which isn't perfect, but all the latest data that we know of shows brand equity really has to do with reviews and has to do with your product listing more than anything else. Does your product listing actually communicate what Jeff was talking about, the unique selling proposition of your product? And do reviews provide the social proof around that? And if they do, that's brand equity on Amazon. In fact, it's so strong that it tends to, that brand equity, that new brand equity on Amazon is so powerful in consumers' minds that it tends to outweigh the brand equity that a product has built off of Amazon. Meaning, when Amazon launched its own battery line that was half the price and had 500 positive reviews within a couple of weeks, it displaced Duracell completely. When Amazon launched the same thing with their kids' wipes, did the same thing. Now, this isn't just Amazon specific. It's the same thing for all the different what you would call private label brands on Amazon. When they acquire enough reviews, and consumers have been found to actually pretty well spot fake reviews. A couple of the recent studies have come out showing that, like, when consumers are looking through and they're all 5-star reviews, they tend to navigate to a product that has some negative reviews. So when a brand has built authentic, positive reviews and they have the features and all the different levers within that product detail page that communicate the unique selling proposition, that's what they need. Those are the elements that they need. One example to me, and they've actually launched outside of Amazon, but they grew up on Amazon, is Anchor products. What they did was they spent a lot of time kind of perfecting their formula with images. And I think they were ahead of the curve. They started doing this 6-7 years ago and creating infographics for most of their images rather than just lifestyle or product images. And they were ahead of the curve because today, 75% of traffic on Amazon is mobile traffic. And people are swiping left to right through their device rather than top to bottom, and they're seeing images instead of seeing bullet points. And so Anchor was way ahead of the curve by putting all that product information into an image. And if brands aren't doing that today, they're behind the curve.
I'll give an example from 3 weeks ago. Mother's Day, a week before Mother's Day, I needed a gift. And my wife had been talking about wanting to grow an herb garden. And I went on Amazon, and none of the brands are anything you've ever heard of. They're all the names you just said. Now, I don't know who, if I was to think about like what brand would I have recognized, I don't know, maybe like a Sharper Image, right? Like maybe like if I had seen that, it would have been a brand that I would recognize. But what I was looking for is exactly what Joe just said. I was looking at the photos. I was reading the descriptions. I was understanding what the brand promise was. And then I was checking reviews to see whether the reviews reiterated the brand promise. And the one that I ended up buying, I think it was called like a veg box or something like that. It ended up not working. Because they had this whole promise of like anybody can grow anything, and she didn't grow anything. And I reached out to them after the 30-day time period.
Yes.
And they gave me a refund. And so they lived the brand promise that they were making, which would give me, I might go back and write a 4-star review and say the product didn't do what I wanted it to do, but man, the brand really stood behind the product because, it wasn't what I wanted. It didn't work for me, but you want to work with a reputable company. This is a company to work with because that's what people are looking for. And that's how those brands can win. And so you have to think about not just the promise that you're making in the listing, but how you're actually fulfilling that promise through your product, your packaging, your support, your communication, and everything else.
I want to change gears here and talk about this process of thinking about how to manage to margin on Amazon. You've got a brand your brand is underperforming other companies. You may be underinvesting in the product and the traffic for your product. How do you think about how much margin you need to give up or should be giving up in order to fix these problems to get to a place where eventually you can come back to making solid margins and making them on higher sales?
It's a pretty general question. When we think about margin, it's more about understanding what sort of profit, what sort of margin am I trying to utilize, not just profit margin trying to generate, but of that margin, what am I utilizing to reinvest in the channel to provide additional growth and continuity over the long term? And the general rule of thumb is 10% of sales. If you have the COGS to support that cost of goods sold, then you want to be reinvesting 10% of your top line in advertising and in marketing and in new product development, improving your product in order to make it competitive over the long haul. Where you have greater margin, we would advise investing even more of that, sometimes up to 15%. The difficulty is that margins are squeezed on Amazon, and you see a lot of people spending below 5% of their top sales on advertising or marketing on the channel.
Jeff, thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to business class.
Yep.
We've hit that a few times. Understand the product life cycle really becomes a critical component of this. So are you introducing a new product, growing in the growth phase of your product, in the maturity phase of your product, or in the decline? And the investment in profitability for how you handle each of those 4 different areas should be different. If you look at your catalog, I'm stealing a presentation here from Peter Kearns, but if you look at your catalog is going to have a head, a torso, and a tail. And you're going to have products that are going to be in the high growth, high profit, and you're going to have stuff in the tail, which is losing money. And you want to go back to understanding, again, strategy at a product level, where each of these go and how much investment you want to make. There was a great article that I was quoted in about a $1 million brand that launched on Amazon in its first year. And the author of the article asked me, well, she asked me 2 things. 1, how many brands are successful in doing $1 million in their first year? And I was like, it's like the 1% of the 1% if you're lucky. And 2, why did this person succeed in building $1 million digitally native brand where everybody else failed? And what I said was that he was a true entrepreneur, and he had faith in his product, and he invested in it. So he ordered the inventory that he needed. He invested into the ads and the listings that he needed. He didn't run out of stock, right? He came with he had a unique selling proposition in what he was doing. He came into the market to win. He didn't come into the market to dip his toes. And if you come in and you've got kind of, I don't want to say it's like, hell or high water, but like, if you know you have a product that can succeed, are you making the investment into it for where you want your product to be, not where your product is?
Okay, so let's talk about that. I'm a big national brand. I haven't been very active in Amazon. I'm used to having 15% market share on most shelves in whatever retail outlets I'm sold. Now I'm coming to Amazon and I'm saying, give me my 15%. What do you mean I don't get my 15%? How do I need to grow up as a brand, a big brand with lots of assets, lots of people, and yet I haven't figured out how to play this game on Amazon? How do I make that transition? Where do I start to build infrastructure so that I can succeed and start to have some of the share that I might feel is rightfully mine?
Well, the first thing you need to understand is it's no longer going to be about relationships with your buyer and the shelf space that's determined. And it all has to do with, it's pay to play, and purchasing the inventory and advertising in order to get in front of eyeballs, but then also investing the resources to make sure that well, and let me take a step back here. The very first thing that they need to do is understand that they need to control their channel or govern their channel. They need to be the ones that are actually the seller of record. They need to have brand registry. They need to have control of the listing content. And they need to own the buy box and in order to do that, if they're a national brand, they're going to have to align their marketing and sales teams. They're going to have to look at their distribution policies. And they're going to have to curb the efforts of sales that create retail arbitrage opportunity. So product is sold at a lower amount and then it's resold on Amazon.
Right.
All those things, number one. Once you get control of that, which is more of a process and an event, it's continuing, then it's about optimizing your product. Because if you're sending a lot of advertising dollars and traffic to those listings and it's not optimized, then it's wasteful spending. So you need to optimize that. You need to optimize it from a conversions point of view and for SEO's sake. And there's a lot that goes into all the different parts of the product detail page, but then also communicating the value proposition, and also looking at, are there additional elements of that product detail page, like perhaps video, things that national brands don't look at creating individual product videos, right? They have their national ads that they run, and they have such a big variety of SKUs. Typically, they don't have individual product videos. Well, they need to look at their assortment and understand, what are my top 5% of my products, and which of those should I be creating product video around? Because that's going to play a big part in the relevance of their product and the conversion rate of it. And then when it comes to advertising, it's SKU by SKU advertising rather than blanket assortment advertising, which they're going to do. And so they're going to have to either bring in-house the expertise or outsource the expertise in order to do keyword isolation on a SKU by SKU basis, and then advertise on those appropriately. So for them, it's like turning it upside down for them. They're now looking at it with like the small business owner's entrepreneurial perspective, instead of looking at it like the corporate, I'm managing a relationship and my Walmart buyer is going to take care of me.
I want to change one thing you said, which you said was Amazon's pay to play, because I think that the digitally native brands don't get the other side of this, which is that shelf space is pay to play too. Right. And so understand that the pay to play is just different on Amazon. And what you're still paying, you're still going to need to pay to get the momentum that you need. And I think the two biggest things for brands that are looking to come onto Amazon that have an established brand is you need a bottom up, top down support of the Amazon channel. So if you have infighting between your sales reps or the channel managers or things like that, you're kind of destined to fail. And then two is you really need a strategy that's based on where your current brand is. So has your brand been sold and then clearanced and then discounted, which means it's being sold on Amazon by arbitrageurs? Or did you have distribution agreements and you need to narrow that down? And so I think one of the things you're starting to see, big brands, right? If we go to the biggest side, the P&Gs of the world, they're starting to write brick and mortar contracts to get their product back from the store so that it doesn't go into clearance and end up on all the websites.
Yep.
And so smart brands are starting to build, are starting to improve their distribution channels so that they can control their e-commerce channel. And that's a critical function, is that your distribution channel and your e-commerce channel are going to collide at some point in time. And that's what Joe was saying, was starting with brand registry and making sure you have distribution agreements that are controlling who can sell and who you're competing against. And I remember talking to a guy from Colgate at a trade show a couple of years ago, and he said, what should I do? I go, you know what the best thing you should do? Go create your own bundle and start selling it on Amazon as a SKU that nobody else can have. Right? Like, start controlling the Amazon in some way, shape, or form to build a consensus back to your office that this channel needs a better representation, because your brand, you've lost your brand, or you don't have control of your brand, or you're losing sales. And you're starting to see brands do that. For people that are in the wholesale distribution, they're now giving kind of exclusivity or limited exclusivity to a number of people. They're putting better rules and regulations in their distribution agreements. They're changing their SKUs so that, I call it the old television trick, right? There's a reason why every box store would offer you a price back guarantee on a TV, because none of them had the same models. But you might have to look at Amazon in that same way and look at how you bring products to the channel. The other thing that I would think of that you didn't mention, Joe, is how are you packaging for e-commerce versus how are you packaging for the store? if you've got a lower priced item, you might want a 3-pack or a 4-pack to get it up to a price point that makes sense. All these things come into the overall strategy for how to succeed.
The last thing I would add is that they also need to understand the customer journey. They're looking at this from what they consider omni-channel is retail and like their website e-commerce. But omni-channel really has to do with all the components, marketplaces plus website plus all their retail points. And consumers don't just go to Amazon and stay on Amazon. They don't just go to your website and stay here or in the store. They bounce between all those different points. And Amazon's advertising shouldn't just be siloed into its own advertising budget, like and all the resources put towards it. You should be looking at what are the resources we're putting towards all of retail and e-commerce, and how do those all functionally play together? Because the customer journey goes through all of them.
Right.
And if you
Right.
don't have all of your listings optimized on Amazon, then all these customers are going to search on Google. They're going to see probably Amazon listings come up before your own brand. And that's the perception they're going to get of your brand. So all the millions, perhaps hundreds of millions, if you're a large brand, that you've spent on brand equity get devalued in an instant because there's some arbitrager selling a bundled version of your product on Amazon. And so understanding that customer journey means that you have to invest the same type of resources, the same amount in resources, perhaps more, and cutting edge expertise in Amazon continually to make sure it doesn't actually disrupt the other channels that you're selling in as well. I wanted to take 1 minute to talk about some of these questions here, and Jeff, maybe you can give your spin on them too. We had a question here about products that are sold by 1P Amazon, that's directly by Amazon. And they're asking if they're more likely to receive the Amazon's Choice badge. Amazon's Choice, Amazon hasn't actually revealed exactly what goes into that. Some of the differential diagnosis of experimenting, what we found is that definitely price, sales, velocity within the subcategory has to do a lot with it. Return rate of your product has a lot to do with Amazon's Choice. If you have a low return rate, then you're more likely to get the Amazon's Choice badge. When it comes to whether Amazon 1P gets this more often or not, it does look like they get it more often than not, but that doesn't mean it's causation. A lot of those 1P products, Amazon wants to have those, what they call critical products to their assortment. And they're the type of products that would naturally have Amazon's Choice, even if they were sold 3P. Do you want to jump in on any others?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I would also tell people, best choice usually is more at like the category level, where bestseller is more at like the keyword level, but also look at like what the keyword or the category is, because it's usually relative to what you typed. And everybody types something slightly differently. And so I don't want to say, I don't know, badges are a way of gamifying the site. So we as consultants and software suppliers and brands are fighting for these badges, but we don't even know what they really mean. They just mean you won. You don't know what you won, but you won something. Like I love when I get off my bike and I get a new badge, that I did something good on my bike. I don't even know what I did, but I got a badge. And I'm supposed to tell people about it. So I wouldn't get so hung up on, do you have the badge? And I agree with you that it's the full cycle. Did they search for a term, find your product, buy your product, like your product, which is the review? And that's the full cycle. So returns mean they didn't like your product.
We only have about 6 more minutes left here. I encourage folks to submit questions through the Q&A tab on the screen. I want to ask the question around, we had a question from Georgios. How do you handle Amazon as a competitor in this person's niche? The top 7 brands are sold and fulfilled by Amazon. What does it mean for me to be the number 8 seller in that space? How do I win in a space that's dominated right now by Amazon 1P?
Jeff, you start.
Is that a particular keyword? I mean, this is always like, there's always so much, there's almost so much to dissect before you can really give an answer.
Well, let's generalize. How
Yeah.
do I win in a space where Amazon 1P seems to be winning across the board? How do I outwit Amazon 1P?
You've got, I mean, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. You've got to differentiate your product, and you've got to dial your brand into the type of buyer that, you know, you're looking to succeed with. If you're just saying I'm the 8th best product from what's out there, you've got to be different in some way that's going to make somebody want to buy from you, right? Google was the 30th best search engine when they launched. So it doesn't mean you can't be number one. It just means that you have to differentiate along the way to build your brand and your brand equity that people want to buy from you versus buying those other products.
Well, I like that example that Jeff just gave of Google, because one of like, if you were to talk to Eric Schmidt, right, past CEO of Google, he would say that one of the main reasons that they gained competitive market share over everyone else had to do with their advertising, meaning that they created a more functional and a cleaner version of paid advertising than any other search engine. And when you're talking about it on Amazon, how do you compete with all these 1P brands? It's refining and developing product detail pages and advertising that is cleaner. How do you develop cleaner advertising? Well, you have a number of assortment of advertising units now that weren't available a couple of years ago. It was all sponsored ads a couple of years ago, but now you have the sponsored products, the sponsored brand ads as far as banners go, but you have video and search, and you have a lot of ad units that a lot of 1P sellers are not leveraging today. One thing to consider is that even though we may feel like there's kind of this 1P juice, a lot of these 1P sellers don't have strong active management of their entire catalog or their advertising. They basically have fallen into like the trap that they believe Amazon, because they sell to Amazon, everything's going to be taken care of. So you have a distinct advantage there if you're nimble to outplay them on advertising and with the optimization of your products as well.
Question came in terms of what advice do you give to a private label brand whose biggest competitor is selling on Vendor Central at a price that you can't otherwise compete against? How do you win beating 1P, beating lower price alternatives?
Well, I think one of the best ways you can do that is with off Amazon advertising. One of our previous clients sold a feminine product that they were launching it. It was brand new to the marketplace, and they were going up against competitors that were selling products in like the $15 to $20 range, and their products sold for $59. And to launch them immediately and go after some of these very short tail or competitive keywords, I mean, that would have just been a waste of advertising spend. And so what we did with them was we helped them develop landing pages off Amazon and drove traffic to those landing pages and gave people the option of purchasing on the landing page or going to Amazon. And you saw about 70% of that traffic go through to Amazon, 70% of the traffic that converted go through to Amazon and purchase. And some of that, like Jeff mentioned earlier, may have floated to some other products, but their relevancy increased so quickly because their conversion rate was so high. I mean, the conversion rate was about 30%. And we actually did not turn on their Amazon advertising. We didn't want low converting traffic going to their listing. And within a couple months, they were ranked in the top 2 on organic search for some of the most competitive keywords against big national brands, even though their product was priced 4 times as high. And these were products sold by 1P. So that is one of the ways that you can really compete against some 1P products. But it takes a significant amount of time and resources to develop the off Amazon traffic. It's not just something you can do overnight.
And I think people don't always understand this. If you've got a $60 product and you're competing against a $15 product, you don't have to sell the same volume of them to be ranked right behind them, right? Because it's the value of your total orders times your selling price that Amazon's looking at. And that's why we worked with a Bluetooth speaker that was $300 who was ranking on page 1 with $25 speakers, because if they sold 10, it was equal to the other guys selling, 100. So it's not sales volume is not always one-to-one. It's relative to your selling price.
Gentlemen, we're just about out of time here. Closing thoughts from either of you in terms of the challenges of beating seemingly inferior brands and winning on Amazon.
I think first you need to have a complete branding strategy. You really need to encapsulate what your unique selling proposition is in your product listings. You need to have a complete advertising strategy from the bottom of the funnel up. And then you need to look at all the levers that they're engaging in, all the different things that you can do to drive additional traffic or increase your conversion rate, and apply those things to your products as well on a product by product basis.
Jeff?
I think you gave a great answer. What I would say is follow what Joe just said, but focus on the right thing at the right time. I think that where a lot of people get mixed up is they go, oh, Joe mentioned video ads, I want to go do video ads. Make sure it's that video ads is what you need to be doing, and that you're spending your time doing it because it's the right piece. Because if your photos aren't there, your conversion isn't there, then getting hyper focused on one of these niche pieces, landing pages, external traffic, you're not doing it in the right order. And everybody's order is different. And so you have to kind of understand from that strategy perspective, where are you at, and what's the lever that's going to get you the best return for your investment.
Jeff and Jose, thank you both for joining us today. For all of you who have joined us to listen in, we will be sharing the recording a little bit later in the next couple of days. Thank you all. Stay safe and look forward to the next discussion. Take care.
Thanks, James.